So it's a little bit past 7 in the morning on December 7th, and around this time back in 1941, there were several thousand sailors here who were not aware of what was about to take place when the Japanese Imperial Navy sent a wave of attacks to Pearl Harbor. So my family and I have come to experience the anniversary ceremonies and some of the different events that are centered around it, and so we're going to be waiting in a long line here, as there are a lot of people who have also come to commemorate this historic event, and we'll share with you some of the activities and some of the ceremonies that take place here today.
While we're waiting to get into the memorial site, allow me to share with you the main reason we're here: my grandparents. Rhoda Ruth Bias was born in Huntington, West Virginia in 1918, and 2 years later, George Avant Christian was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1920. At the age of 18, George enlisted in the United States Navy, where he befriended a man by the name of Haymond Bias. Haymond introduced George to his sister Rhoda, and they became frequent pen pals. Friendly correspondence turned into love letters, and in the winter of 1941 they planned to marry, but fate would have other plans for the couple.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
George and Haymond were both stationed in Pearl Harbor the day of the attack. George was aboard the USS Perry, a destroyer moored on the other side of Ford Island from Battleship Row. During the attack, one of George's other friends named Jack Cole was shot in the neck. George helped him to safety and took over his gun post. George, Jack, and Haymond were among the fortunate survivors of the attack. 2,403 others were not so lucky. The attack greatly altered the lives of many Americans, but when it came to the relationship of George and Rhoda, it was only a delay. They married the next year in Reno, Nevada. George also served in the Korean War and worked in several jobs connected to his military background until his retirement. He also served as secretary for the Olympic Peninsula chapter of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association. Together, the couple made multiple visits to Honolulu for George to meet with his fellow survivors, including his friend Jack, who he helped survive the attack. Together, they had 4 children: Vicky, Michael, Ruth Ann, and Jeffrey. From their 4 children, they had 13 grandchildren, one of which was myself. Some of my earliest memories include watching American Gladiators and pro wrestling on TV with Grandpa, and sneaking quietly through the living room as he slept on his recliner. One night in October of 1993, when I was about 8 years old, we received the news that Grandpa had passed away at the age of 72. I never had the opportunity to speak to him about his experiences in Pearl Harbor, as I was fairly young and really didn't have the capability to comprehend and truly appreciate knowing what he went through. It was around my high school years that Grandma showed me a copy of his memoir that he wrote, and I began to have a much better appreciation and understanding of his experience that December day in 1941. In the video description, there are links to several articles written about my grandfather, as well as a link to a copy of his memoir and a link to the report given by the USS Perry's commander describing the ship's actions during the attack. Grandpa is mentioned near the end of that report as G.A. Christian. A few years after reading that memoir, Grandma passed away in December of 2004 at the age of 86. Because of their love of Hawaii and the time they had spent here together, it was their wish to have their remains brought here. After some time and coordination, this trip was arranged to bring them to their final resting place. The interment was still a few days away, so we made our way to an event to commemorate the attack which my grandfather had survived. Every year on December 7th, the Pearl Harbor National Memorial Site hosts a Remembrance Day ceremony that begins at the same time that the attack started. Those who waited in line to attend the ceremony had the opportunity to welcome remaining survivors who came as invited guests of the ceremony. This gentleman was a part of my experience later in the day, but I'll explain more about that in a bit. The ceremony itself was held in the middle of the Pearl Harbor National Memorial Grounds, and within view of the harbor where the attack occurred. Attendees included visitors and armed service members representing each of the different branches of the military. The survivors were seated on a stage facing the audience for their tribute. The ceremony began with the introduction of speakers, a moment of silence, followed by a flyover of F-22 fighter jets in the missing man formation, and then the playing of the national anthem. After the retreat of the flags, a pass-in review was conducted with the USS William P. Lawrence. There were also several special guests invited to speak at the ceremony.
としてもやがては親しい友仲睦まじい同胞のように互いを思いやり信じ合うことができるようになるのだということを
of this esteemed gathering of World War II veterans just behind me.
The tragic attack that occurred here at Pearl Harbor 78 years ago, but we also use this opportunity to honor and recognize the resilience and the grit of our nation and these veterans following the attack.
Back, I'm reminded of the stories that my father would tell me about his war experiences as an enlisted man stationed on board the Hawaii-based aircraft carrier USS Lexington, a carrier that departed Pearl Harbor just a few days before the attack.
We also honor the survivors, both military and civilian, and their fellow veterans, expressing our shared gratitude for their sacrifice and service throughout the war and beyond.
After the main speeches, they presented wreaths that represented each of the different branches of the armed services, and each branch was given a ceremonial ringing of the bell that was salvaged from the USS Arizona. Following a few words for each branch, they would ask anyone who had served in the respective branch to rise as able for recognition while playing the fight song for that branch. Among those to rise were my stepfather Carmen for his service in the Marine Corps, and my mom Ruth Ann, who served in the Air Force. After the presentation of the wreaths, there was a traditional military memorial, including a 21-gun salute and the playing of taps. The ceremony also featured a vintage aircraft flyover. At its conclusion, survivors received one last tribute during their exit from the ceremony with a salute from uniformed sailors and being greeted by the guest speakers.
After the ceremony came to a conclusion, I had a chance to speak to one of the survivors that was present here, a gentleman by the name of Warren Upton, who was on the USS Utah. And all I said to him was that my grandfather, George Christian, was a survivor off of the USS Perry, and he passed away when I was about 8 years old, and that I really appreciated the opportunity to be able to shake hands with a survivor. And it was nice to be able to have that opportunity, because my grandfather passed away when I was really young, and I never had the chance to sit and talk to him about his personal experiences. You know, when you're 8, you're more focused on video games and toys and things like that. So, but it was a nice moment. So we're going to be doing a little bit more exploring around. We'll be coming back to Pearl Harbor a little bit later in the week when things are a little calmer, and we'll get a chance to explore things like the USS Arizona Memorial out there, and I'm hoping we'll also get a chance to go to where my grandfather's ship was located when he was here.
Thank you for watching this video from Coasting with Culture. If you haven't already done so, please consider clicking that subscribe button down below if you'd like to see future videos. You can also find Coasting with Culture on Twitter and Facebook as well. And of course, for more travel experiences, visit coastingwithculture.com. Until next time, take care and safe travels.